Career Series. Today's topic is applying to Ivy League schools. Our guest is Sandra Lautier, a graduate of Cornell University. Sandra, thank you for joining us today. My name is Karen, and I will serve as moderator. I will start the program by asking a few questions, and then we will open the floor for other students to come and ask questions. We encourage you to turn your camera on and stay on mute unless you're going to be asking a question. So our first question is, what is the benefit of attending an Ivy League school?
I think the main benefit of attending an Ivy League school is just the name recognition. Unfortunately or fortunately, once you get out into the real world and try looking for jobs, a lot of times employers will automatically assume things based on what schools you go to. And having an Ivy League education really helps in terms of boosting your resume and getting jobs. And if you are looking for jobs at like prestigious law firms and at investment banks, like in New York City or in Boston, I know a lot of those places only take people from certain schools. So it's just basically a way to open up opportunities for you that would otherwise, while not impossible to get, makes it more easy to get. And also, I mean, I think, like I said, fortunately or unfortunately, people make assumptions about you based on like what school you go to, and just having that little bit of a boost of having that on your resume helps with job opportunities, especially.
I think for the people that are interested in going to an Ivy League school, that's something to keep in mind and something that they should be looking for. Our next question is, what do I need to do to give myself a shot at getting in?
So I think that's a lot. There's a lot of things there. I think obviously grades and test scores. And I think you guys are juniors, so I think at this point, like that's pretty much cemented. But also something that's really important, and I know as an interviewer, I used to do interviews at Cornell for prospective students, and we're really just looking for someone who's like well-rounded, right? So someone who has interests other than just academics, who's involved in community, who's like doing good things. We want someone who's like just a good person all around that will represent the school well during your time as a student, but also after. Basically someone who is well-rounded and active in the community and standing up for like social justice issues or other issues that you're passionate about or interested in. Just showing that you are, you know, not just like doing your homework and getting good grades, but someone that's really contributing to the community.
Yeah, I think that's something to be mindful of. You know, not everything is just about academics.
Exactly.
Sandra, Karen, can I interject? Could you talk about your experience getting in, Sandra? Applying, and maybe your high school, like what you brought to the table when you were an applicant?
Sure. So I grew up in East Hartford. I went to East Hartford High for 2 years, and then I transferred to a smaller private school in Simsbury. I'm first generation American, so I didn't really have that much experience when it came to like knowing about college. Like, no, my parents didn't go to college or anything, so I wasn't really like ingrained in like the college atmosphere or knowing like where to apply or really like what that process was like. But actually transferring to like the smaller private school, I had really great resources there in terms of guidance counselors and stuff. And they were really able to like expand my knowledge about what schools to apply to. And originally I did not want to go to a big school. Cornell's, I think, has 20,000 students, and that kind of seemed overwhelming to me, just because having transferred to a smaller school, I felt like I needed that smaller environment to kind of feel like someone was like guiding me and like keeping track of like, you know, or just being able to have like resources more like one-on-one was something that I was really looking for. But then I started applying to schools, and a huge factor for me was cost. I've always been good about like thinking about the future, and I knew that no one was going to pay for my college tuition other than me. So I knew that I didn't want to leave school with like a whole bunch of debt. And I think that's probably one of the best considerations that I took when I was applying to school. Because even now, I mean, I graduated from college in 2011, and a lot of my peers still have, who went to like other schools that were very expensive and didn't give a lot of financial aid. They're still like trying to pay off their debt, and it's like something that's really stressful. So I think that's a huge consideration when I was applying to school. So another benefit of applying to Ivy League schools is if your parents aren't making like over, I'm not sure what the threshold is now, but I think it's like over $100,000. They pretty much pay for all of it. So I think that was when I was comparing the acceptances. Cornell was the school that gave me the most money. Like I only had to pay a couple $1,000s a year. So I was able to leave with only like, I think like $15,000 in debt, which is compared to like what other people have, like they have hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt, was a really good deal. So that was the main consideration for me, just how much money they were able to give me. And I think that's true for most Ivy League schools. They give you a lot of money if your parents aren't making, if they're not making more than $100,000. And I think that's pretty rare anyway. So that's a huge consideration for me. And yeah, I applied to a lot of schools and basically got fee waivers for all the schools and kind of just thought like, this is like a huge, like it took a long time. It was a huge investment, but definitely worth it. Because at the end of the day, this is going to affect, not to be too dramatic here, but affect the rest of your life. And yeah, so I would recommend just applying to as many schools as you can, getting fee waivers, because I know back then it was like $100 per school to apply to. Just putting some rich schools on your list, just even if it seems like a little bit like out of reach, just put a couple on there and see what happens. And worst case scenario, they say no, and that's fine.
And just to follow up on that, do you think it's smart to apply to all of the Ivy League schools?
I think that would be really time consuming. I think it'd be smart to, and I don't know, I don't want to go against any guidance that you've been given already, but this is just my opinion. Maybe like 2 or 3 Ivy League schools, and then like a couple below that tier, and then a couple below that tier, and then like a couple of state schools. I know state schools are really competitive too, so I think taking a couple from each type of school, like state schools, Ivy League schools, small, if you're interested, small liberal arts schools, would be a good plan.
Do you have any tips for filling out the application?
I think the most important part are the essays. That'll really show your skills in terms of writing. Especially if you're applying to like a liberal arts school or a school or if you want to like major in journalism or English or something like that. So I would say really concentrate on the essays, because like I said before, at this point, you kind of you've done what you've done, right? So you got your grades, you got your test scores, you have all your activities listed. So the only major difference you can make in your application, I think, besides like accurately reporting everything, making sure that everything you've done is on there, is really working on your essays. So put in a lot of time. Like I said before, it's an investment, right? Like it's a lot of work right now, but you have to think about it in the long term. Like this is going to affect the rest of your life. So do multiple drafts, show them to multiple people, ask them for their feedback. And my experience has been like everyone's more than willing to help, like your people at your school, other people like maybe in your community, your parents. I think just having multiple people look at it and give you feedback is really helpful.
I think that's good to know, especially since like I'm a sophomore, so pretty soon I have to be preparing to apply to colleges and stuff like that. Our last question is, when you interview a student, what has been the difference between a student you endorse versus the one that did not get your approval?
That's a really good question. I think it has to do with like how prepared the person is, because it kind of shows that you care. So like if I ask someone a question and it's kind of like an obvious question that they could have, like they should have seen coming, and they don't, and it seems like they didn't think about it, it kind of shows like they don't really care. And then that's kind of an indication to me that that's not a good applicant. So for example, if I ask someone like, why do you want to attend Cornell University? And they're like caught flat-footed, like if you didn't anticipate that question, it kind of means like you didn't care. So one thing, like I don't feel like I'm a particularly good interviewer. So when I've applied for schools and jobs, what I do is I write out all the questions that I think that they're going to ask me. And I think, like I said, some of them are really obvious. And then I write out the answer and I just practice it like over and over again. And I felt like that has made me feel more comfortable in the interview, especially if like you're nervous. Just like practicing and like thinking about it ahead of time really helps, I think.
I think that's something really important that we should be mindful of when writing our application and getting interviewed. So now we're going to open it up to anyone else who has questions. So you can type it in the chat or unmute if you have any questions. So if
We have a question here. I'm gonna bring my for Demarion to ask it. Hold on. Or just you could just ask it right to mine.
Like, other than what you talked about, what was like other experiences at an Ivy League school?
Did you catch that, Sandra?
Yeah. I think the question was, what were some other experiences at Ivy League schools? So, I mean, I was, like I said before, like I wanted a smaller school, and I know that some Ivy League schools are pretty small. So this is just my experience at Cornell. I just felt like there was so much there, which was good and bad, in that like it took me a while to figure out what I wanted to like major in and like what classes I want to take. But it's also good because I got to take like a whole bunch of like random classes that were like taught by really smart people. So I think that's one of the major advantages of going to like Cornell or a big school like that, is that there's so many different things for you to explore in terms of like what your interests are, especially if you don't know what you want to do when you graduate from college. And I mean, it was I felt like it was a little bit of a culture shock. There's a lot of people who are multi-generational Ivy League school, from families that went to Ivy League schools for many years, and there's it's not uncommon to kind of feel like you don't really fit in, but I think you'll always find a group of people who are kind of like come from your background. I think the school does a really good job about, or the schools in general do a really good job about attracting or recruiting people who come from different backgrounds, so that everyone kind of feels like they fit in. And yeah, it's just so many things to do there, and so many different activities. So I would definitely recommend it.
We have a few questions in the chat. But how can you stand out to the people who are reviewing your application? What can you do to make yourself stand out?
I think I haven't looked at the common application in a while or any of the applications, but sometimes there's like an option to like write a diversity statement or a statement, like an extra statement. Always do that. Try to give your application some, make your application more unique than like the run of the mill. I got good grades, I volunteer, and that type of stuff. So just kind of like give your background, like tell them about your family and your upbringing and what makes you unique. And they really value that. Like they want people who are gonna speak up in class and be like, well, that's not everyone's experience, and kind of like, your unique experience will also help the other students at the university. So they want someone who has had a different experience growing up. So just show how you are different. And I know that's a pretty broad statement, but you all are unique, and just highlighting that in the essays, I think is really important.
A student asked, what other Ivy League schools did you apply to?
I think I applied to Columbia and Cornell, and those are the only two I applied to.
What about the other schools?
I don't think I applied to them. Oh, sorry.
Oh, like other schools that are not Ivy, like
yeah,
UConn probably.
I don't think I applied to UConn. I applied to Wake Forest, Bates, Northeastern, just a whole bunch of random schools. I don't recall like how I came up with the list. Connecticut College, Trinity, most Northeast, most of my schools were in the Northeast. I know I didn't want to go too far. I didn't want to go too far from my family. Fordham, I think. Yeah, so it was a good mix of different schools, but I'm glad I had a couple of reaches on there, because I didn't feel like I was qualified for an Ivy League school. So I'm glad I put a couple on there.
She asked, were you still scared when you were being interviewed, even though you had practice?
Yes, I am to this day, when I'm being interviewed for like jobs and stuff, although I haven't interviewed for a job in a while, but yeah, even though I practice, is still a little bit nervous, but less nervous than I would if I'm just going in there cold, just trying to wing it. Because some people are good on their feet, I will say. Like some people can wing it, and that's great for them. I'm just not one of those people, and I still get nervous. Yeah.
Okay. Another student asked, do you think Ivy League schools change someone for the better? Also, do they prepare them for the real world?
Really good question. I think it depends. I think it depends on the person and what you make of your experience. Ivy League schools are just like any other schools, in that you can take that experience and kind of throw it away, like partying, going to, getting involved in things that you shouldn't get involved in crowds that you shouldn't get involved in. And I think that exists at every school. So I really do think it depends on the person. I think you can come out as a better person, but you can also come out as a worse person. So I really do think it depends on the individual and like how seriously you're taking it. And I know, like, as an 18-year-old, that's really hard, like to kind of think about the future and kind of think about how big of an investment this is, an opportunity it is, because you're only going to have it once. So just really taking that into consideration, I think, is really important. Like, don't throw it away.
Mm-hmm. What did you major in?
I majored in industrial and labor relations. I knew that I wanted around my junior year, I figured out that I wanted to go to law school. And that was one of the majors that really concentrated on like interpreting statutes and laws. So it was really good for preparing people for law school. So I majored in that. And I guess another big perk about going to an Ivy League school is they typically have a good staff who are available. If you want to like apply to law school, there's like people who only do that. Like they help the students at the schools only apply to law school. So there's a lot of resources like that at Ivy League schools.
How did you hear about that major in the first place? Because I think a lot of our students tend to gravitate towards the same few majors, and branching out and learning about something new maybe is a risk or something they don't know how to do.
Yeah, so it's actually a school at Cornell, the School of Industrial and Labor Relations. So it was a pretty like at Cornell, it's a pretty broad major in like a lot of people do it. So I think I just heard of it through like being there.
In other words, you came in undecided?
Yeah.
Or did you do a different major and switch?
So I came in undecided. Like I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I thought maybe I wanted to go to law school, but I wasn't sure. And then like being there and like hearing about that program really in that major really made me interested in pursuing it. It just kind of made it easier. Like I didn't have to think about it as much. It was just able to streamline me into like preparing to apply for law school.
Another student asked, what was the workload like for you?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
What was the workload like for you?
Yeah, it was definitely intense. My first year, I struggled with like getting organized because I was just used to being able to do the assignment that was due like the next day, the night before, and you can't really get away with that. Well, at least I couldn't get away with that at Cornell. Like you really had to plan. You had to be very disciplined about like setting aside time every single day and every single weekend to get your work done, get ahead of your work. Otherwise, like it just becomes too much. So it took me like a year to figure that out. But they have a ton of resources there to help you if you're struggling. Get organized and kind of get back on top of your work. And they wouldn't admit you if they didn't think you could do the work. And I think for me, it was just like a organization thing. Like I just needed more help, being more disciplined about getting ahead of my work.
If you didn't go to law school, what would you have done?
I have no idea. And to be honest, though, I'm like not sure. Like, you know, like I do enjoy my job as a lawyer, but sometimes I'm like I'm not sure if that's what I should have done. And that's a really good question, and I'm still trying to figure that out. So I don't know. I have no idea.
But I'm sure there was many other like so if you had not gotten that's kind of a risk if somebody's planning law school and then they don't get in or something, right? But I'm sure there was probably plenty of other opportunities that you were eligible for or that would have presented themselves if you were looking for them, right?
Of course, yeah. So a lot of people who majored in the same thing as me ended up being like HR professionals at like big companies in New York, or mostly HR people or like marketing. Like stuff in the corporate world, I think would have been a good fit just because it pays well and it kind of gives you like a nice lifestyle. And I think it's pretty safe. So I think probably that.
Do you have any study tips that helped you?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Do you have any study tips that helped you?
Study tips, yep. So like I said before, just being very organized and kind of timing, like working backwards. So let's say like you have a project, a paper, or a test in a month. working backwards from there and just knowing like, I know I'm going to need like 10 hours to study for this test or 10 hours to write this paper. I have 4 weeks to do it. I'm going to set aside like 2.5 hours every week and just be like super disciplined about it. Because at least for me, I'm not like very motivated to do work on my free time. So if I don't block off that time, then like it just won't get done. And then I'm super like scrambled and stressed out at the like when it's due. Or like writing papers has always been hard for me. If I had to write like a 10-page or 20-page paper, like it just seemed so overwhelming to me that it was hard for me to get started. But just like breaking it down, like I'm going to do 1 page a day. Or like review a chapter a day for a test. I think just being like super disciplined and writing down what you need to do is super helpful.
All right. We have time for one more question. Anyone else has anything else they want to ask? What was the hardest part of being in an IB school?
I think it was, like I said before, like that first year adjustment of being able to kind of get away with studying the night before or doing like my homework the night before, paper the night before. I think I was able to do that in high school, but it really is like a new level of academics and I guess a little bit of competition. I would say that there's also a feeling of competition too, which was a little bit difficult to adjust to. And so yeah, the first year getting organized and dealing with like a little bit of the competition of feeling like you're competing with your peers was the hardest part.
I think that's relatable, like finding motivation and procrastinating. I feel like that's something a lot of us are struggling with this year, especially. So I think that's something that we should be mindful of if we are interested in going to an Ivy school and for the future. All right. We want to thank you for joining us today. I know this is very informative for myself and for the other students, and I appreciate you coming to educate us. We can. Oh, so the students can reach out to you. You can provide your email, and then they can email you with any questions they have about the program.
Yeah, that'd be great. Do you want me to just put it in the chat here? Let me just put it in the chat here so that you guys have it. Yeah, and feel free to email me with any questions or email me and I can give you a call. I'm available if you need any help or even like reviewing statements and stuff if they're not too long. I'm glad to do it. Or any questions that you have, please feel free to reach out.
All right. Thank you. And thank you to the students for listening. I think that's it.
All right, thank you. Bye.